Well, welcome to Bill's History and Wargame World, and we've traveled to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we're with Mr. Matt. And Matt, take it away. Where are we?
Yeah, we're at the Braddock's Battlefield History Center, and we're very happy to have you guys here today. Right where we are standing is where the Battle of Monongahela broke out on July 9th, 1755. One of the most pivotal battles, not only in North American history, but it sent shockwaves around the globe. So it's actually global history as well, where all these different groups of people clashed on that day. And we saw devastation and chaos, and also eventually a French and their native allies' victory. So it played a huge role in our history, and we're just very happy to have you guys here. But also, we have Shawn right here, who can tell you a little bit more about when we're open. And take it away, Shawn.
I'm Shawn. I'm the Public Engagement and Operations Manager here at Braddock's Battlefield History Center. We are actually open currently Friday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Beginning probably in May, we will switch back to our summer hours, which adds Thursday. So it'll be Thursday through Sunday, 11 to 4. So we invite anyone to come on out, visit the current museum, and we look forward to expanding our museum sometime in the near future. We have another 5,500 square feet in our building to expand into, and we also have 4 acres directly behind our building to create a park for. So
we got a lot to do.
You have a lot going on, and I notice, Matt, will you show us our your library gift shop area?
Yeah, and look, we even have some people looking through it. Awesome.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Goober the Traveling Bear has arrived.
We're so happy he made it.
I see he paid for his admission fee, and he's wearing his Gettysburg licensed battlefield badge that the Park Service sent him. And so you carry our games. What do you have here in books that people could order from you online if they can't make it?
We have, of course, we have your games here. We have, well, Goober is not for sale. But we also have a lot of different books that are relating to the time period, relating to the 7 Years' War, the French and Indian War, and of course, you know, with young Washington, what was happening right here in the Ohio River Valley. One, if I can't recommend it enough, Braddock's Defeat by Dr. David Preston. If you want to know what happened right here where we're standing at, you can read that and then come visit us, and you really get the best picture possible of what happened on July 9, 1755.
And Dr. David Preston and I have done many talks together, and he supports my war games, which is very cool.
And he's on our board here, so it's great to have one of the if not the top scholar on this battle here.
All right, well, we're going to pause the video here. We're going to check out our museum and also maybe walk a little bit outside. And thank you for letting Goober the Traveling Bear visit too.
Our center here and along 6th Street, I think it's important that we kind of note the Battle of Monongahela and really a lot of what's been talked about for years, which is essentially an old story of General Braddock. And since it gets the name Braddock's Defeat, there is the subconscious thought that it's all Braddock's fault. Everything that he did, he could have done. There's all these options he could have done better. It was it places the blame squarely on his shoulders. I would say after new research has continued to be done, new primary sources, very specifically standing on the shoulders of people who have gone through, like I said, with Dr. David Preston, really taking this story and now fleshing out the facts. You know, let's look at not just the British perspective, but let's look at the French. Let's look at the Native American side here. And really, rather than calling this a defeat of the British, Braddock's Defeat, why couldn't we call it a Franco and Native victory? Because truly on that day, what happened was a lot different than what the old narrative pushes. You know, that fact of, if we would go about 2 miles that direction, you're going to get down to where the Edgar Thomson Steel Works is today. So Andrew Carnegie's first steel mill, that's where he puts it. We know that down in that area is where the march of General Braddock, he crosses over the river there early on July 9, 1755. Now, just to back up ever so slightly, to think about General Braddock and just where is this guy coming from? What's going on before this? So General Braddock was actually the commandant at Gibraltar. All right, he had been pretty much the leader there. Had worked with supplying the troops there, worked with an indigenous population. So there are elements that he was actually very valuable for what was going to be happening on this campaign. So he was chosen to come over here and, move up to attack Fort Duquesne, but as well as continue that push, and then if he could, continue up to the other French forts as well that were throughout the Ohio River Valley at this time. Of course, you have Fort Duquesne, which is right down at the point, and really, Braddock doesn't get too far away from it. Where we're at today is very close to Pittsburgh. But Braddock puts together a campaign that is going to have over 2,000 soldiers. It's going to need artillery. It's going to have supply wagons, horses, everything that they need. And they are going to move up incredibly rapidly, building a road as they go. Braddock has been kind of given a bad rap for moving slowly. Well, by the early July, he is literally on the precipice of Fort Duquesne. Earlier on in the campaign, he had written a letter that said he believed that he would put Fort Duquesne under siege July 10th. So he's right on time. He's putting right in that early July timetable. That's when I believe I'm going to be laying siege to Fort Duquesne. And here he is, July 9th. He makes it to this spot. This is about as far as his army is going to get, and when he's going to clash with the French. So let's think about what the French are doing a little bit before this. Fort Duquesne, which is going to be controlling those three rivers, the crucial spot. If you can control those three rivers, you can control a great amount of territory. But let's also think of where Fort Duquesne is. It is difficult to get soldiers and supplies to Fort Duquesne from New France, to move them down from those various other fortifications. We often think of Braddock's journey. Let us think of the leader that's going to end up at Fort Duquesne, which is going to be Captain Beaujeu. This guy had to come down, and his journey was almost just as difficult as what we think with General Braddock building that road up from Alexandria and continuing along here. And timing is going to play such a huge role, because if you do not have Beaujeu arriving at Fort Duquesne when he does, this whole battle doesn't happen. If those reinforcements don't get there, we don't have the Battle of Monongahela as we know it today on July 9th, which is rather fascinating to think of. Timing is going to come into play, a little bit of luck, and what we're going to see along here is that actually where we're standing at is going to be the first clash of this battle, where these two groups are going to meet, the French and the British, and then their native allies are going to, of the French specifically, are going to play the largest role in this battle. And it all happens right here. Warriors begin to move down the flanks. I would argue is the most crucial moment, because it sets the tone for the entire battle and completely changes it from being this just force to force right here. But now it becomes a running battle down the flanks of this army that Braddock is now reacting. That's all he can do. He has to react to what's happening to him rather than being able to put troops out, things like that. Okay? Any questions? See this kind of sloping ground that we have? Yes, of course, we have had the town of Braddock as an industrial sense that has grown up around here because of the steel mill. So a lot of that terrain has probably shifted a little bit, but we still can see the way the ground is sloping up this way. You can even see some of these heights that are up in this direction. So whenever Braddock and his army crossed over, they're coming up at like almost a slight diagonal. Because if they were going to try and go up some of these banks, it was going to be straight up. They're going up like this. And that means he's actually going to be kind of, whenever this battle breaks out, he gets caught, he essentially gets crossed up. Going already like huffing and puffing. So when I say Braddock made it this far, by that I mean his army, his force did. Braddock's not at the front. He's probably somewhere closer to the middle.
Yeah, security detail Kevin Hasgoober. We are now approaching the Washington Monument, and I'll let Matt take it away here.
Yeah, sure. So over here, of course, we have our George Washington statue, really showing, George Washington was with Braddock. He was an aide-de-camp during this campaign. He had he did have a unique relationship with General Braddock to a certain extent. But whenever he's here, he's going to be a part of this terrible defeat, but he's also going to then... Oh, hi, Goober. Hey, how you doing? He wants to hang out with George. But George Washington, he's going to act very courageously during this. He's going to remain near the general for almost the entirety of the battle. He's going to witness this chaos. He's going to be a part of it to the extent that there are musket balls that apparently actually go through his coat but do not strike him. This is where we know Braddock's defeat. This is the imagery that usually comes to your head, the story that we know of this kind of jumbled up mass of troops, the chaos that's going on. That probably happened right back throughout here. Miscommunication, friendly fire that happens. Try and imagine the smoke and essentially the fog of war that would be throughout this entire area. We also still notice that higher ground that's starting to get up that we see over here, this slope that is happening. So really...
So would you say this is the high ground they're searching for, or more of the high ground beyond?
It's probably, when again, with the way the houses have grown up here, there may have been even more of a slope. But, you know, you can still see, like, even back there, and it's very reminiscent of, if you look at the image that is done here, this is a painting done by the artist Leutz. They also did the Crossing of the Delaware painting. And you can actually see, it does look, if you get those hills in the background, it does look rather reminiscent, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So it kind of gives us that idea of what's going on here for General Braddock.
So where would have been the flanking road that they were trying to...
Well, they're trying to build that essentially, and it's going up this direction.
All right, so this is a diagonal.
This is... If you kind of look back where the Edgar Thompson Steelworks is, through those trees back there,
right.
This is, and I'm saying roughly,
no, I understand,
is the path that they're taking to move up in a diagonal to get up to these heights. So that way they don't, because if they have to go straight up, it's going to be a strain on the horses, wagons, and artillery.
And so you would say it was going towards where the visitor center is.
Yes,
from here?
yes.
And then from there you've got the ravine, which is 6th Street, that they got ambushed in.
Right there, and then everything starts to fall back this way.
Gotcha.
And you have that crescent moon. So with this high ground, all the native warriors have to do is give ground. That's something that's important to remember, that all they have to do is just keep moving backwards as the British have to ascend the heights to try and push them off. Braddock, you know, in this circumstance, let's think about his options. When he realizes what's going on at the front, he's got officers either coming back wounded, Shawn St. Clair, or not coming back at all. There's confusion as to what's going on up at the front. He's trying to send troops ahead. Jeez, General Braddock wished he had that speed.
Yeah, that's right.
They're running, these other troops that are coming up are running in to these troops that are falling back. That's leading into chaos. This column that's coming up, if it's trying to face out, some of those officers that might be going out in front of their men are being struck, being killed. Very high casualty rate amongst the officers that happens. That's going to lead to chaos. Braddock has to make a decision. At this point, he could try and push through. The only problem is if he tries to break through forward and just run everyone, move everyone straight ahead, what defensible position does he have in front of him? He doesn't know. Sure, even if he has an idea of there, yeah, when we get on top of this kind of ridge line, we could try and fortify. He doesn't know what's up there. He's going to be assaulted when he does that. It's different whenever you have a fort in front of you that you know you can go to. You have a defensive position. Or people would say, well, why didn't he retreat? Why didn't he move back? Where's he going to go? The river's there. That was at the same morning, he was so careful, believing he was going to be ambushed at the river. Now he's just going to be heading right back there into essentially a killing spot. This is his only option. Even if we look at 1763, when we see what Colonel Bouquet does with what he runs, he backs up to a piece of high ground. Braddock doesn't have that. The only place he's going to go back to is that river. So he actually has to fight here. That's his only choice, which is what he does. As I said earlier, he's going to put up artillery to try and solidify his left up here. He's going to move up troops the best that he can. He's going to try and have them face out. You might ask, well, why didn't he have flankers out to stop this ambush? Why didn't he have that? Well, the thing is, he did. That's a lot of people don't ever mention that. I believe he had them at about 75 yards to 100 yards away. But let's go back to what we mentioned about the amount of distance to travel that amount of time. It can be very quick.
And if they weren't set up in a preset ambush position, those flankers wouldn't pick them up until they got up there.
And also,
because the way you're describing them coming around.
And they're dealing with the best frontier fighters, arguably in the world. Native warriors are the best at what they do.
He hated this one? No? Yes?
There were rumors that he was.
Okay.
I don't think so. We hear that, because if I'm correct, I hear that they say he's in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, maybe it would make the French victory more glorious if he was here. That's why Braddock got defeated.
Yeah.
So, Matt, I need to ask, because I know I'll get someone to ask me, was George Washington wounded here?
Was he wounded here? No. Surprisingly not, because nearly, almost every other officer seemed to be wounded. One of Braddock's other prominent officers, who was essentially his right-hand man, Orm, he was wounded here. Washington, though, was not struck miraculously. Again, he had musket balls that pierced his coat, but they didn't strike him. There are stories, as Washington apparently says to Braddock at one point, "Let me take some of the provincial troops, move into the woods, and fight as they know how to." And Braddock says no. People have speculated as to why he said that for years. Was it a rigidness that Braddock had? It's this idea that the British military functions in one way, and that's how they know to fight. Maybe. Also at this point, probably when Washington asked that, Washington's one of the last things he has that resembles an officer, because the rest of them have been killed or wounded at this point. He needs him. He needs Washington there. So at that point, you could make the argument that by telling him to, no, I need you to stay here, don't go off and fight with these troops, he could have honestly saved his life. That's, again, a perspective we don't often think about. But if Washington goes riding off or, moves in with those other soldiers, he could become a victim of friendly fire. He could be, caught up in one of the, in a fight with some of these native warriors. Who knows what would happen? But we do know that he was with Braddock throughout this battle. And when Braddock is actually mounting his 5th horse, because 4 have been shot out from under him, he is finally struck. And that is when Braddock is going to be mortally wounded. Falls from his horse. They're going to rush over to him, put him in his officer's sash, and remove him to a tumbrel cart, and then remove him from the field. So this is, again, when we see that, the chaos and the defeat happen. One of the last things Braddock actually does, and this really paints a good picture for it, and again, this was in that chapter on the battle, he orders the colors to be pushed into the group of soldiers to try and just get them to separate. That's how chaotic it is. You have just these jumbled up men that are trying to kind of, figure out what's going on. The fear of battle takes over, adrenaline kicks in, survival becomes such a huge part of this. So you have that chaos. You have these men who are they're looking for commands, most likely from their officers, who aren't there. It was the perfect storm for Braddock in that moment. So to say, Braddock could have done this, this, and this, gives us this, because, again, going back to what we said about Braddock, it's almost as we look at it as it was this determined, it was already determined. We think of Braddock's defeat as this, when he got to this point, he was going to lose, when that just simply wasn't so. This story where it involves Benjamin Franklin, and says, Lodge member Benjamin Franklin was concerned by the premature celebrations he had seen. So actually it's quite the opposite. People saying this is going to be successful. They believe that this army is going to be able to take Fort Duquesne easily. 2 acquaintances had recently come to his home with a subscription to raise money for the expense of a grand firework to celebrate the news of Fort Duquesne's capture. So already jumping the gun. Franklin warned them that it would be time enough to prepare for the rejoicing when we knew we should have occasion to rejoice. The two doctors, these were the acquaintances, their confidence stunned, replied, "Why the devil? You surely don't suppose that the fort will not be taken." The subscription was dropped after Franklin admonished them. The events of war are subject to great uncertainty. I think that encapsulates this very well. This was not some predetermined defeat, and also it was not a predetermined victory. So it's important that we look at the battle as well-rounded as we can. Beaujeu's plan that he put into place on July 9th was so good that he didn't even need to be alive to see it work. That's something to remember. And the
walking tour that Matt gave us is incredible. We're now walking into the museum, and he's going to finish up with a talk about the conclusion of the Battle of Monongahela. So this is what the museum looks like at the moment. I'm probably going to do a detailed video of that in a few minutes. But right now we'll wait for Matt to appear and give us our conclusion. Well, this is the Braddock Youth Project, summer of 2022. I think they've done a really nice job. They're using armies in plastic, I believe. And I think they really got the feeling of the Native Americans doing the flanking. So this museum's got quite a bit to offer. I like the sign Braddock's defeat, Beaujeu's victory, and the artwork they have here. We're going to zip over and see if Matt's ready to give us our conclusion. So the museum has this beautiful cannon in the centerpiece, and oh my gosh, it's Goober the Traveling Bear, and he loves this museum. This is Goober approved. All right, and we got Matt in here. Matt, can you give us the conclusion of what happened at the end of Monongahela? What about the camp followers? And fill us in on some of that.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy that Goober approves, first off. But yeah, so after we did our tour and we talked about this battle, I think it can be hard for us to remember just the devastation that occurred from this. The fact that there was about 2/3 of this army that Braddock had on July 9th, 1755, that was killed or wounded. 66% casualty rate is insane to think about. So we had those people who are now limping back towards what we know as Fort Necessity or Dunbar's camp. Imagine those people coming in and with the stories they're being told. That's going to cause people fearing that the French are going to continue on and attack them. Many at Dunbar's camp believed that would happen. Of course, you probably had some camp followers that were along with this advance column, may have been captured or killed. Those that are back at Dunbar's camp, what's going to happen? What should we do? And then, of course, the fact that General Braddock himself is wounded. How does that affect morale? And it did in a huge way. 4 days after this, he is going to succumb to his wounds. He will die. He is going to, before he dies, he gifts his sash, actually, to George Washington, which is still at Mount Vernon today. But when he does pass away, they bury him in the road. And then Dunbar is going to make the decision that he's on his way out. They are not, this army is going to go into winter quarters. There's no salvaging this campaign. We're out of here. And they're going to march over where Braddock's body is buried. If you go along Route 40, that's when you're going to be able to see the monument of where his remains are today, and then you can actually walk down to where the road would have been, and they marched over.
Yes, and Goober and I were visiting there this past November for, what was it, the War College.
Oh, great. So yeah, so Goober, you're well versed in all this stuff. But yeah, it is, and then after that, the fact that the French captured so much Braddock's papers, things like that. Think about this. In 1755, war hasn't even officially been declared yet. So this is going to play into that. In 1756, we see war is declared that is going to be a global conflict, the 7 Years' War. All of this igniting in the back country of western Pennsylvania and expanding around the globe is going to claim countless lives, affect countless people. You know, it has this huge role in our history. And a lot of people don't know where it happened. You know, it happened here, right underneath our feet. And you see not only those ripples that, yes, lead to this global war, but then we're still experiencing the repercussions from the French and Indian War. Things that happen here are going to lead then from people that had those experiences at this battle into the Revolution. George Washington, and there's countless other names that you can look at that were involved, you know, that are going to play a role, a major role, some of them, of course, in the war for American independence. So there's so much that we can talk about here at Braddock's Battlefield History Center.
Thank you very much. And before we conclude my video, is there anything else you'd like to say about either this site or your parent site would be what, Fort Ligonier?
Fort Ligonier. We are just so thankful for the people who come and visit us and get to experience this history. And I know on behalf of our staff, myself, Shawn, we love telling this story. And we want to see more people come to this site, to Fort Ligonier, but just to be able to tell it, because they're both connected. Our history is all connected together. If it doesn't happen, we aren't where we're at today, and that's so important to know. So yeah, we hope that we see you all in the future, and we thank you for your continued support. And we want to thank Goober for coming out today. He's done a great job manning the cannon here. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for bringing your friends, and we look forward to seeing more people in the future.
All right, well, that's it for my video. Stay safe, be kind, and be courteous, everyone. Life's short. Be nice to people. Thank you.